Okay, here we are doing something a little bit different today. This is Explain 10, and we are at the Montrose Regional Airport getting ready to fly a couple of VIP passengers to Van Nuys. Yeah, and those VIPs might know who they are, but I'm not going to say anything yet anyway. This is the Gulfstream 650. Uh, in the real world, it costs something like 65 million. So this is a pretty dang nice plane, and it also goes dang near Mach 1. So this is going to be a pretty quick one here. Let's see. Okay, so jumping into the cockpit, the flight plan is excuse me, the flight plan is already in. We're pretty much good to go, except for starting the engines up, which we shall do now. Everybody's aboard. We're ready to get going. Okay, so here we go with engines. Left engine coming online. And the right engine coming on. And generators. And inverters. Okay. And turn the flight director on. See, 200 knots there. 350 speed. Okay, and we are ready to taxi, so here we go. Throttle's coming up. Whoa. Oops. That's not a good idea. Some off-roading at a $65 million Gulfstream, that's probably not a good idea. Let's see, I think I'm going a little too fast here. And yeah, okay, we're going to go ahead and use auto taxi. So a little plug-in. It's sort of like a cruise control there. Set the taxi speed to 12 knots. It's going to be runway 17, or it's 35 actually. That works too. Okay, so this is actually runway 35 we're taking off on. I'm not familiar with this airport at all, so we went to a runway that I wasn't planning on, but that works. So, and check it. See, engines are all good. Flaps are at 20. That is what we want. Let's see here. Looks like we should pretty much be good to go. So, here we go. And this gets a little, whoa, man, that thing's so on. And landing gear coming up. That wasn't the best takeoff there, but and flaps up. Okay, so we're leveling at 10,000 feet. Bump the speed up to 250. Okay, so the first navigational point we are headed to is called Dove Creek, or DVC, and that is also what is known as a VOR, and I'm not quite sure what that stands for, but that is an action. There is an VOR is an actual radio beacon on the ground that broadcast a signal. And before the days of GPS, that was the way that aircraft navigated. They hone in on that signal, and there'd be like a heading to that signal, like, and from that they would be able to tell where it was and be able to fly to it, and then basically plug in the next one and fly to it, and so on and so on. But nowadays we have GPS, so that's most of the coordinates in here are now GPS coordinates. And that is also why the source is set to GPS. That's the navigational source. With the flight, the autopilot is getting its navigational data from. Okay, let's see. So what I'm going to do here is we will keep the video going until we reach cruising altitude, and maybe a little while after that, but I'm not going to keep it going the entire time that we're en route, as that is going to be kind of boring. Just basically like any other flight, hanging out and doing pretty much just making sure everything is looking okay. So this screen here is called the primary flight display, and it has a speed tape and an altitude tape, and right now we are going, indicated airspeed is 250, and altitude is coming up on 20,000. Now, indicated airspeed is not, this is where this aircraft differ from cars substantially, because indicated airspeed is not how fast you're actually going. How fast we're actually going is called true airspeed, and that is over here, and that is actually 350. So we're going considerably faster than what this indicated airspeed shows. And then the other speed that there is here is ground speed, and that is 338, and that is your true airspeed with wind factored in, and we have a 29 knot wind coming from coming in at an angle from the left, from the right front rather, and that is actually slowing us down by is that slowing us down? I believe that, I'm not quite clear on that, but I believe that is, our ground speed is lower than our true speed, so that I believe that means that is in fact slowing us down by about 20 knots at the moment. And now we're leveled off at 22,000. And we're going to go ahead and climb up to the cruising altitude, which is going to be, we'll just make it 42. Now we'll crank the altitude up to 42,000 feet, which is also known as flight level 420. And then we need vertical speed, which is basically how, and I believe that is feet per minute, which will set at 3,000. And the other thing is that we're well above 10,000 feet, so we don't have to worry about the 250 knot speed limit, so we can crank this up substantially to say 300 knots. We should be able to climb just fine at that speed. But we may have to lower that if we get up. To our maximum speed over here, which is shown by like a red. There'll be a red line at the top of this speed tape. And one of the other things this primary flight display shows is Mach speed. That's the percentage of speed of sound that we're going, and it's currently 0.74 and rising. And this aircraft will actually do 0.93, I believe it is. Something like that. So that is how fast we'll actually be going once we get up to cruising altitude. And that is pretty dang quick. This is the Gulfstream G650 is in fact the second fastest civilian aircraft. The fastest one is the new version of the Cessna Citation 10. It's called the Citation 10 Plus, and it will do 9.3 or better, I believe, or rather 0.93 or better. Okay, and the center, so you have two center screens here. This one is the kind of like a map. And these little kind of like hexagonal, is that a hexagon or is it a circle? Anyway, these little shapes here are the VORs I was talking about earlier, and that is Dove Creek that we're getting very close to. And that is somewhere in southwestern Colorado. I'm not sure exactly where that's at. That should be southwest of Montrose, somewhere in that general area. And there might actually be a city called Dove Creek. I'm not sure about that. City or town in Colorado called Dove Creek. That's usually where these VORs are located, at actual cities or airports. And now we're seeing this red line here, which means we can't go above 340 knots indicated. But we are already at Mach 0.84, so we're getting close. And we are also above 30,000 feet, so we switch the speed indicator to Mach. And that'll hold at 0.85 until we get up to 42,000. Then we're going to bump that up to 9.3. And now we're turning to the next waypoint, which is Rooll. I believe that's Rooll. And that is, I want to say that is very close to or almost on top of the Grand Canyon, so we will be going directly over the Grand Canyon here, or at least a virtual version of the Grand Canyon. And we're getting close to cruising altitude. occurred to me that, let's see, we do not need taxi lights on at 40,000 feet, but we do need strobes. So turn those on. And we might actually also want the yaw dampener on. Not quite clear on what let's see, that's basically that provides a smoother ride because it dampens yaw, and I'm not quite clear on what that is actually. So that might be for a later video at some point. Okay, we are just about at cruising altitude. And we are going to go ahead and bump the speed up to 0.93. And as you can see here, our true airspeed is going up quite a bit. Should be somewhere in the 520s roughly. And that's where it is. We do have a 36 knot headwind, or almost headwind, and therefore, like I mentioned earlier, the ground speed is lower than the true airspeed. And you can see down here on this, we're at 0.92, and that might actually be as high. That's pretty dang close to as fast as we can go. So 9.3 might actually be a little too fast at the moment. Make it 9.2. Okay, so we are at cruising altitude where we will stay for quite a while, for probably the better part of an hour at least, until we have to start descending into Van Nuys. So let's see, what else can we, this gadget here is called the Flight Management Computer, or FMC, and that's basically it. The one in X-Plane is fairly simple, doesn't do anywhere near what the real thing does, but this is where you enter in the flight plan information, and currently we are going to the third segment of the flight plan, which is at Rule, and it is 108 miles away, and we should be there in roughly 13 minutes. So if we advance this ahead, to the last one on here, which I believe is, Umber is currently the last one on here because they have a couple more I have to stick in here after that once we get a little bit closer. So we are that is saying 1609 for a estimated time of arrival, so that's 409. And I think that is going to, I'm hoping that's mountain time. If not, this is going to be a little tight on time. So anyways, every point in here pretty much is a GPS coordinates basically for each one of these waypoints along the route. with the exception of Palmdale, which is another one of those VORs I was talking about. This one is at Palmdale, California, and that is still quite and that does not look right there. That's saying it's 7,000 miles away. That doesn't make sense. And that might be because of this. That's a route, that's a fix on the route that it couldn't find. So that might be why it is acting up there and not giving me proper information. And I don't want to not sure what happens if I delete that, so I don't think I'm going to delete that until we actually get to the... Wait a minute. Sure whether I accidentally deleted something there or not. Hopefully not. Okay, so we're still a ways out from the Grand Canyon, so I think that's what I'm going to do is go ahead and pause this video so it's not recording this whole time. And then once we get over the Grand Canyon, we'll turn it back on and have a little sightseeing of the Grand Canyon there. So, see you in a bit. Okay, we are back. Coming up over the Grand Canyon. And I think this is the beginning of the Grand Canyon right here, almost directly under the plane. And that is most likely the Colorado River. And a little cloudy here, so it's kind of unfortunate. There is actually some weather showing up in this area, in the real world, and also in X-Plane. So right now, real life, it is in fact raining near the Grand Canyon. X-Plane has the ability to import actual weather. So, doesn't look like we're out. Let's see. I'm going to move it around here a little. And there's some thunder. So you do have a thunderstorm up ahead. We may have to deviate around that. It's real world, we may or may not be deviating around that thunderstorm. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to get to see much of the Grand Canyon other than this little bit right there. So back into the cockpit we go. And all this green here showing up on this second screen, that is all weather. And if any of that were, I believe it's red or maybe like really dark brown, we would not want to be going through it. So that's kind of sort of what flying over a thunderstorm or flying over a rain shower looks like in X-Plane. And we'll go back outside here for a moment. You don't know whether we're going to see any lightning or not, but Okay, so right now we are over Arizona en route to Van Nuys, California, and it's going to be a while yet before we start descending, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video so we're not just so this doesn't get too long and we're just sitting here while we're flying along. Oh, see you when we start to descend. Okay, welcome back to the cockpit. We are partway into the descent into Van Nuys. We've descended down to about 18,900 feet so far. And we are coming up on getting close to Palmdale. So, take a look here. Yeah, 66 miles to Palmdale. And roughly 15 minutes out of Van Nuys right now. Give or take a few. Okay, so while we continue the approach, I'll explain a few more things here. This whole panel here is the autopilot. This display there is the speed for the auto throttle, and that is very similar to a cruise control in a car. Pretty much works the same way. This holds a constant speed that's dialed in with this dial right there. Coming over to the right, that's the heading display. You can set it to fly a specific heading with this knob, and then the HDG button is what activates that. And then this display here is the altitude display, and we're currently descending it to 14,000 feet. So you'll see that ALT has got is in yellow there. That means it's armed, and that can also be manually set with the dial. That is the VNAV button. That's vertical navigation. That has to be on to basically for altitudes that are programmed into the FMC, which I will try to show you here in a minute, to automatically be input, so you can just descend via a certain descent profile, I guess you could call it. And then this is vertical navigation, or rather vertical speed, and we're currently descending at 800 feet per minute. That can be raised or lowered via this knob right there, and vertical speed is engaged when this V/S button is green, or has a green outline around it. Let's see here. So so that vertical navigation works with the FMC, and it's based off of this fly at line there. So we want this fix called copal, and we want to be at 14,000 feet at that fix. So that is how you put that in there, and it will automatically descend to that altitude at that waypoint. And then we want 12 at Palmdale, so basically it's descending between every point here. Yeah, that looks ugly. We're going to go. Okay, what else? That's all your engine indicators there. This top one is called N1, I believe that is, and that is the basically like an RPM gauge or a tachometer for the outer, I believe that is the outer fan blade of the jet engines. So that's how fast the outer blade is spinning at. I think. I might be mistaken there, so don't quote me on that. This bottom one, I believe is a temperature. I think that's called ITT, internal turbine temperature or something like that. So that is a temperature gauge. And this is also a RPM indicator. I'm not quite clear on what that one is at the moment. This control right there, that is the landing gear. We'll be using that in a little bit. Let's see, so we are coming up still 21 miles out of Kimmel. Cool. And these buttons here add or get rid of certain items on this display. And that is weather, that is the TCAS is the traffic collision avoidance. It shows where other planes are. Airports gets rid, that either puts airports on there or takes them off. Waypoints is all the waypoints, that's the majority of what's on here. VORs is VORs, which is what we were talking about earlier with the, like Palmdale is a VOR. And that is, like I said before, a actual physical beacon that is on the ground. And NDB is non-directional beacon. Not quite sure how to describe what that is right offhand, but that is what NDB stands for. And this knob is what controls the zoom level of this map, and it's currently set to 80 miles, so we can bump it into 40. As we're getting close, we'll go ahead and do that. Let's see what else. This display here is all the autopilot modes that are currently armed. So we have auto throttles armed, we have localizer armed, and then altitude select. And localizer is what has to be turned on for the GPS to function correctly. And then let's see, the speed display will go between, which I think you might have had this on earlier, but that will go between knots and Mach speed. Flight level change, that FLCH is flight level change. That's another way of either climbing or descending. Let's see here. G/S is glide slope. That's an actual radio beacon that provides vertical guidance. It's usually 3 degrees going into an airport. Not all runways, not all airports have those, and not all runways at a specific airport will have that either. But actually, the reason we're going to Van Nuys and not to another airport is because they have what is called an ILS approach. And that is what uses this glide slope. And that is a vertical, that is basically a radio beacon that guides you in. And looks like that this city you can kind of see down there, that is Palmdale, California. Or the virtual representation of Palmdale, California. And if memory serves, that is where Lockheed Martin is. An aircraft manufacturer, Lockheed Martin, has their we're going to go ahead and slow down here. Getting closer in, so we are going to start slowing down. We're down to 250. Not quite sure what that beeping noise was. Everything looks okay as far as I can tell. Just going to confirm that everything else is in here correctly, and it looks like it is. We are now 7 minutes out of Van Nuys. That's going to increase slightly because we are not going to be maintaining the current speed that we're going. And now that we are below 10,000 feet, we do have to stay at 250 indicated or less, and that is where we are at right now. We are at exactly 250 knots. And that is indicated airspeed, not true airspeed or ground, because we're still right around 300 true airspeed and ground airspeed. Now, ILS approaches have a frequency that are associated with them, and that is set up already down here on the radios. Nav 1 is 111.30. That is the frequency for the ILS approach into Van Nuys. So we have that set already. And we are getting pretty close now. I'm going to keep decreasing our speed here so we're not going too fast when we get in close. Crap. Oh, that sucks. That plane just crashed on me. So, yep, just crashed.